I'm a small town kid born with a big city spirit. I choose to play a lot of awesome roles in life: mom, wife, entrepreneur, CEO, board member, investor, and mentor. 17 years ago, I founded a marketing consultancy, and ever since, my husband JR and I have been building our careers and our family on the exact same timeline. Yep, that means 4 kids, 3 businesses, 2 careers, all building towards one life we love. When I discovered that I could purposefully embrace all of these ands in my life, it unlocked my world. And I want that for you too. I'm Tiffany Souter, and this is Scared Confident. In my last solo show, we commemorated Scared Confident's 2-year birthday, and I shared where my mind and heart has been on where does the message go from here? Like, what does Scared Confident the next 2 years look like? I've been continuing to set my mind and heart on that question of what do I have to share? What is it about my perspective that I think is unique? Where have I decided that things will be decidedly true in my life? And so I thought I'd share, I guess, just a little bit more about how I see some of the message tenets, the brand tenets coming together underneath this idea of creating a premier resource for 2 career families that really want to have it all, that want a life of that want to say, I'm going to excel at my career, I'm going to excel in my relationships, and I'm going to excel in myself, in my own growth, in my body, in my self-care, in my ability to completely feel like I've stepped into my talents and who I am as a person and what God designed me to be, so that I can be totally available to see and serve the people around me. That's what I want out of my life. And this podcast is part of my journey, and capturing what I know to be true, verbally journaling that for myself so that I can discover it, so that I can share it, so that I can help you on that journey and continue to commit to those behaviors, those practices, and those mindsets as I go into the next 65 years of my life. Somebody told me one time that how old you believe you're going to live has a profound effect on how long you live. So I have started in the last 6 months writing it into the world that I'm going to live to be 102. Quince will be 62 years old. And I feel like at that point, she should be fine. When you have a baby at 40, you have to live a long time. So 102, that's my goal. So how do I be these things intentionally so that I can continue to grow? So I have 6 things that I haven't said out loud. They've been rolling around in my head. And so we'll say them out loud and we'll see how they feel, and we'll continue to work on this together. So what do you need to become? How do you need to think? Things you need to bring into your space if you want to live a life of and what are the things that we're going to explore over the next couple of years? The first one, and Brian Kavicki talked about this in my last episode with him. He really did say this, an abundant mindset, that everything I want, I can get. Believing that everything I want, I can get. The question is simply how. It's not if you can have it. It's not if there's enough in the world. It's not if. It's when, and it's how. And how hard are you willing to work to get it? And your belief, I think about this, it's silly, but I think sometimes women can be oddly competitive about fitness. Are you thinner or not than your friends? Literally, I don't have friends that think like that, but can be a thing. And I would say in unhealthier versions of myself, I have thought that before. But fitness is literally an abundant resource. If I am fit, that does not take that from somebody else. If you are fit, that doesn't take that from me. It's abundant. It's literally available to everyone. And so when you look at the world that way, where you have an abundant mindset, meaning everything I want in the world can happen for me, and your mindset and belief is actually a key piece in you actually putting together the pieces, putting together the plan, putting together the disciplines to get there, you can get. That's an abundant mindset. And there's enough for everyone. I think this is particular when I hear people talking about wanting a career and being a mom. For me, that was obviously a really big knot I had to untie in my mind. But this abundant mindset, it's not if I was going to do those. The question was how. And if I could excel at work and excel at being a mom, what did that look like for me? And how did I put together the choices, the time to actually get there? So abundant mindset, that's the first thing. I think that's so critical. We're going to talk about that. I want to explore ways that we can practice that. An abundant mindset is critical to living a life of and. It's number one. The second is you can't be a wimp. 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 Repeat after me. You can't be a wimp. I don't know if people like to hear that or not, but you've got to do the work. You have got to do hard things even when you don't want to. It can't be chaotic if you want a life of and. You have to figure out how you rest and do that, but it's probably not going to be lackadaisical. It's not going to be accidental. You're going to need to show up on days when you don't feel like it. You're going to need to show up for people sometimes when you don't want to. You are going to have to go on a run when it's raining. You are going to have to drive to a meeting sometimes when the roads are slick. You cannot be a wimp and live a life of and. It takes a level of grit, of moxie, of determination, of fight, because it doesn't accidentally happen. It happens with intention and it happens from decisions. And I say, choose your hard. It is hard to have kids. It is hard not to have kids. It is hard to be married. It is hard not to be married. It is hard to be fit. It is hard to be fat. It is hard to be rich. It is hard to be poor. It is hard to have a job. It is hard not to have a job. It's hard to be a stay-at-home mom. It's hard to be a dual career family. Like, it's literally all hard. All of it's hard. Like, what bad news about being a grown-up? The whole thing is hard. But when you accept that, hey, you know what? This thing called life kind of hard. It's going to take a level of grit and determination. You get to pick the hard. And I have decided I'm going to pick the hard of hard work. I'm going to pick the hard of exercising. I'm going to pick the hard of eating discipline. I'm going to sometimes eating disciplines, mostly eating discipline. I'm going to pick the hard of forgiveness versus bitterness. They're all hard. You cannot be a wimp if you want to live a life of and. And I would like to take this moment to remind you that everything is hard. And so if it's going to be hard anyway, why not pick the path that's hard that gives you the outcome that you want, that gives you your dreams, that gives you the things that you want? Number 3, living a life free from fear. If you're just joining in, I went through a very intentional process at the beginning of this journey of Scare Confident, where I went through a fear journey. And the first step was really naming my fear. What was I afraid of? And then I am such an externalizer. And so what was helpful for me was to take these different aspects of things that I was afraid of and actually go see, is it true? Or is it just fear creating this monster that becomes a belief in my mind that starts to influence and direct my decisions and my actions? And so then I'm like working around this giant thing that my mind has created that is actually not true at all. When we can live freely, comfortably, intentionally in the middle of our talents and who God made us to be, and authentically live open for other people and not through the perspective of how are people going to think of me? What are they going to say? Like, how are people going to react? Like, it is such a self-centered worldview when you are constantly operating through a lens of fear. When you intentionally step into service of others, the attention is not on how the world is going to receive you. The attention or your focus is on what you can give to the world and what you can give to others. And for me, in my story, and I'm sure there's lots of versions of this, but in my experience, it's a totally different way that I can show up to the world when I'm living in a way of how do my talents and my experiences and what I've learned and who I know and the things I've come to understand, how can I share those with other people versus what will they all think of me? And so my desire for everybody listening to this is that you can experience life living free from fear, that it is not determining the outcomes in your life, that you are, that your dreams are what are driving you, not this monster of fear that is trying to detour who you are and who you are supposed to become and the impact that your life is supposed to have in the world. So a life of and is one that lives free from fear. The next one is living with intentionality or like high expectations. I mean this particularly as it relates to like relationships with your family, with your friends, your marriage, your significant other, and also high expectations of yourself. I'll tell you this little vignette and then we'll keep moving here. My husband is, I feel like, very fancy. You know, he was a 3-sport athlete. His name was in the paper all the time as a kid. he went to Princeton, he played football, he's like smart, he's athletic, like all the things. And then I'm me. I'm also great, but in different ways. And I remember when we were in the like poopy part of our marriage, when we looked at each other and said, in so many words, we have high expectations of literally every area of our life. Why do we not have high expectations of our marriage? Why do we not have high expectations that we have the best marriage, that we are the most in love, that we know each other the most, that we know what the other person wants, that we're like excitedly serving the other one, that we're thinking about ways to bring joy into their life, that we're creating expectation, that we're being intentional about experiences, that we're going on adventures together, that we're like doing all the things that great marriages have. Why are we not doing any of that? Our tired, laziest, most pathetic self was walking into the relationship, and we were not being good for each other at all. Like, we weren't being great. We weren't living with intentionality. We didn't have high expectations of it. Like, we wanted great outcomes, but we were not putting in great effort. And I don't want that. And I remember it being a decision of like, no, I've decided I'm going to have a great marriage. Not a good one, not an okay one, not a passable one, not one that gets me at least through the kids, like the kids out of the house, like not that version, like a great one. And I feel like it's the same thing in my friendships. Like, I want great friends. You know what it takes to have great friends? You need to be a great friend. I feel like I've had to learn how to be a great friend. And I feel like probably sometimes I fail my friends. Decide, are you going to have high expectations of yourself, of who you are? I know, ladies, it can be like hard after you have babies to like get back to who not you were before, because there's no version of that before. We are different. Our bodies are different. Our lives are different. Our time is different. But I don't want to lose a sense of like feeling great in my body, no matter what that looks like, because I know that I'm the best version of myself when I feel good about myself. Those are decisions to have high expectations. Okay, the fifth one, authentically celebrating and mentoring others. For me, this is a life of and I think this is probably connected to abundant mindset. Living a life of means that you are not just figuring out what you can take from life, but you are figuring out also where you can give in life. And I have found it is a talent to authentically celebrate other people, their talents, their victories, their accomplishments, their outcomes, the cool things that are happening in their life and the cool things that they have and the like new pool that they put in, all that kind of stuff, to like authentically celebrate others and to authentically see and mentor others. I think a life of has those things in it, where you're celebrating other people, you're mentoring other people, you're seeing and watching and observing and taking a part in other people's worlds that exist, and your whole world is not yourself, because that can be very easy to do. Last one, and this is probably bottom of the pyramid if there is one. I think everything else stacks on this, is a growth mindset. And that is that, and I think about this like time under tension is what creates growth. Think about when you're lifting weights, your muscle only grows when it has time under tension, when it's broken down, when it's pushed and has force and has a counterbalance, and it's like having to work and fight to become a new version of itself. And that growth mindset gets harder to keep hold of as you get older. Like, it is fun to be good at things. It is fun to be known to be excellent. It's fun to be introduced on a stage of like having mastered XYZ topic. It can be difficult and humbling to put yourself back into the student seat of, I know nothing about this. I'm going to look stupid. Like, I don't even know what the words mean. And to really vulnerably, humbly put yourself in the student seat, it's hard. It's harder at 43 than it was at 33, and it's harder at 33 than it was at 23. And so how do we continue to have a growth mindset? And I've said this before, but like physically exerting myself in new and challenging ways, because that's not like a totally safe space for me. I'm not like, woo, she's so athletic. I'm active, not athletic. Those are two different things. And so pushing myself physically is a way for me to like prove to myself I'm staying in a growth mindset. I'm doing something that scares me. I'm doing something that intimidates me physically, and practicing that for when the day comes when I have to do that in my mind or in my business or take a risk or make an investment or whatever it looks like. So those 6 things I believe are critical to creating a life of and each of our ands look different. Each of them looks different. You get to pick what your nouns are, what your roles are. You get to pick that part. You get to pick what you do with your time. But my plea to you is that you are sitting in roles, you are sitting in ways that you're living your life, in things that bring you joy and things that make you feel alive and things that bring you purpose and things that make you feel this thing called life. That is what it's all about. My big thing that I'm like feeling a sense of growth around is I'm going to be the opening keynote at the EOS conference. And if you have no idea what that is, that's fine. The EOS conference, there'll be about 1,500 people there. It's a sold out conference. I think the opening keynote has a really big role in setting a big tone for the conference. And I am feeling really challenged by the excellence I'm putting in, like the expectation I have of what that 60-minute feels like. And the preparation and the intentionality and the practice, all of that has been a very vulnerable experience for me. And so I know I'm growing and that feels great. And keynote speaker is one of the ands that I really want to add into my life. And so that's going to take some work, and it's fun and it's scary and I feel alive. And that's the point. It is my prayer for your life that you feel alive in your days and that we will set intentionality today to be better this week than we were last. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Scared Confident. Until next time, keep telling fear, you will not decide what happens in my life. I will. If you want to get the inside scoop, sign up for my newsletter. We decided to make content for you instead of social media algorithms. The link is waiting for you in show notes, or you can head over to tiffanysauter.com. Thanks for listening in.